Hi, I'm glad you're back with me. You know, the last time we were together, we were talking about how God created everything, and we were talking about how He made Adam and Eve, the first people, and He made them just so He could love them, and that they could just show, by just the way they were, they could show His character. They could show about who God is by their character and how they were, because God said He made them to be like Him. And especially, He made them and He made us so He could love us. And then we went on and we talked about how God had put Adam and Eve in a special garden called the Garden of Eden. And he set them there and He put them in charge, and He had Adam name all the animals, and everything was there for them to eat, and they could eat anything except He told them, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. One thing they weren't supposed to do. Well, you know, it's important for us to love God just like Adam and Eve. And one of the things about love is that one of the ways you show people that you love them is that you do what you're supposed to do. And especially like with your mommy and daddy, you do what they tell you to do. You obey them. In fact, Jesus said to His disciples, He said, if you love me, you will do what I tell you to do. And that's true. And so, you know how it is. If you do something wrong, if you do something your mommy told you not to do, you can't run up to her and say, oh, Mommy, I love you, because you just disobeyed her. And you know that when you disobey your mommy, that's not how you love her, and it's not how you show that you love her. Well, Adam and Eve had that same problem. In fact, they started that problem off because God had told them one thing that they weren't supposed to do. Just one. And they did it. Let me read to you about that. In fact, get your parents to read to you from the 3rd chapter of the book of Genesis. Now, we talked about all the animals, and that included snakes. And the snakes weren't bad then. But Satan is God's enemy. Satan came disguised as a serpent, or snake. A serpent's the same thing as a snake. But he came disguised as a serpent, and it says that the serpent was the wisest or the shrewdest of all the wild animals that God had made. So the serpent, Satan disguised as a serpent, came to Eve one day, and he said to her, did God really say that you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? And she says back to him, she says, of course we may eat from the fruit in the garden. It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we're not allowed to eat. God said you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die. You won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful, and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom that it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment, their eyes were opened, and they suddenly felt shame. You know, that's when we human beings really got in trouble. Adam and Eve were the first people, and we're their children, descendants on down from them. And we have inherited, that's the word we use, we've inherited what they did. And you see, God had put them in that beautiful, beautiful garden and told them, this is the only thing you're not supposed to. You can do anything you want to, just don't do this. And I'll bet you've had this experience. I'll bet you know, because you know if your mommy says, don't do that, you're going to wonder what it's like, and you're going to want to go do it. Yeah, that's the way we are so often. We want to do the thing that somebody told us not to do. Well, Adam and Eve got in trouble doing that. God had put them in this beautiful garden. He put them in charge. In fact, there are many people who believe that this garden is representative of the whole world, and that when God put them in charge of the whole of that garden, it was like they were in charge of the whole world. It's like God put them to be His servants, to be in charge of everything for God. And here, oh my, they come along, and here comes the serpent to say, you know, you need to try this that God said not to do. And they did it. I think they knew that the serpent, Satan in the serpent, was God's enemy. But they listened to him. You know how it is if you listen to the wrong person. The Bible says that bad company corrupts good morals, which means if you hang around, if you are friends with the wrong people, they can get you to doing the wrong things too. Well, Adam and Eve were in the garden, and here is this serpent, and God's enemy is there, and they listen to the wrong person. They listen to Satan, and that was where they started to get in trouble. And they forgot about loving God, and they disobeyed Him. They did exactly what God said not to do. And then it says their eyes were opened. That's kind of an old-fashioned way to say they suddenly understood something that they didn't understand before. Their eyes were opened. You see, the temptation that Satan had used to Eve is, you can be like God. Here, try this. You can be like God, and you can decide, you can know for yourself what's good and what's bad. And Eve thought she wanted to try that. So she did. Well, you know what the real temptation there was, that she could decide, rather than obeying God and let God decide what's good and bad, she could decide good and bad for herself. And of course then she said, here Adam, you try some of this. And so Adam ate of it too. And when they did that, they disobeyed God who loved them, and they showed that they really didn't love God that way. And then, when they did that, they lost that special place they had as God's special loved ones, because they broke that relationship that they had with God. And they entered it by eating with that serpent. They entered into a relationship with God's enemy. Oh my, that was the worst mistake anybody has ever made. And we are still having the problems from it. Now when we come back, we're going to talk about what the results were, what the consequences were from them making that really bad mistake of disobeying God and eating with God's enemy. We'll keep on going with this when we come back.